I saw the notice. It's now streaming live on Facebook.
Oh, okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Um, Before we get started with our conversation, I would like to do introductions. So, my name is Sheridan Threadgill, and I am the Community Engagement Coordinator at Kishwaukee United Way. We can just go around how I see it on my screen. Tia, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'm Tia Anderson. I'm retail manager with Heartland Bank in DeKalb. I'm also co-chair for Kishwaukee United Way.
And then, is it Jana?
Jana, yes.
Yeah,
My name is Jana Mueller, and I'm a fast track specialist with RAMP.
awesome. Katie?
Hi, my name's Katie Lee, and I'm also with RAMP. I am the DeKalb County Manager.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, ladies. And then we'll meet our facilitator and a little bit later. Before we start, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of background about how this conversation came about. So, back in January, the United Way of Illinois launched an equity challenge calling all organizations, businesses, and individuals to engage in weekly material to heighten awareness and encourage discussion around topics in racial equity. The challenge was broken down into small bits of information that could be read, watched, or listened to in small increments of time. I would spend 10 to 15 minutes a day engaging in the content, and then I would use the rest of the week for reflection. Gretchen and I, who is also the executive director of Kishwaukee United Way, would often have conversations about the topics and our experiences. And it was nice to share this space with her because this is not something that I have personally done in the workplace before. This challenge was a learning opportunity for everyone. For me, it was nice to put a name to some of the experiences that I had gone through or witnessed. It was also interesting to think about when I first became aware of my racial identity and how that changed my life moving forward. If you didn't have a chance to sign up for the challenge, you can still view that material online. And I will share the link for that here in this chat, but also on Facebook. So I encourage you all to check that out. As the equity challenge is coming to an end, we know that conversations around DEI must continue. And when we were trying to come up with a topic for this conversation, we wanted it to be something that one, our partner agencies would benefit from, but also something that would be interesting to the community as a whole. So we're excited to have Anne Marie Edwards with us today to talk about cultural competency. Anne Marie is the director of the Center for Black Studies at NIU. Prior to this, she spent 6 years as a career counselor in career services at the same institution.
No, no.
A BS and MS in hospitality and tourism management from Purdue University and worked in the hospitality industry for several years until returning to school to obtain her MBA from help me out, Anne.
Valparaiso University. If you know, you know.
Okay.
You know, you know.
Okay. I meant to ask you that before we started. Currently, Anne is a doctoral candidate in educational psychology, where her emphasis is on Black women and identity development in the higher education environment. In her free time, Anne Marie enjoys traveling, cooking, reading, community service, and spending time with family, friends, and her beloved mini schnauzer, Buffy.
Listen.
So thank you so much, Anne, for joining us, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you, Sheridan. I really appreciate you for the introduction, and I just would like to say ahead of time that I do have a mini schnauzer, and if you don't know about them, they bark at anything and everyone. So if I suddenly go mute, it's probably because Buffy had something to say and she wanted me to listen. So I just wanted to say that. So yay! So I hope that this can be an engaging conversation. This can be a conversation where you feel free to, you can type things in the chat, either on Facebook or in the Zoom room that we're in. And those in the Zoom room, you can actually, like, if you would like to speak, you absolutely can. But I'm going to start by sharing my PowerPoint. And just kind of, this is going to be our framework for this conversation today. And so the title of the presentation is Cultural Competency, Conduits for Assistance and Stopgaps. And so we're going to do a little bit of a dig in, but not too much, because we want to discuss. And I also want this discussion to keep going. So way after the Facebook live ends, after the Zoom ends, that this is a conversation that we continue to have as our, and I say our because I too am a DeKalb County resident, that our community grows. Okay, so let's see. So the goals of today's discussion are really to bring awareness to the impact of what being a culturally competent professional and, in a lot of ways, organization does to the people that you serve, the communities that we serve, as well as to encourage you to find genuine ways of becoming and practicing cultural competency. So I know that it can be what I would say is a scary topic for some. And a lot of times that is because we're just unsure of where to go or how to go or what to say, right? I think the Illinois Equity Challenge has really provided some great resources. And so I noticed, I want to say it was in week 4, Dr. Joseph Flynn, the associate director at the center, provided a really good interview that you should go back and take a listen to. But they cover various topics: racial equity, racism's impact on health, early childhood education, financial literacy, and the environment. Like, these are just really, really good topics. My goal in this presentation is to bring some of that work and some of that conversation back into our community, in our backyard, right? And so one of the questions that I just kind of want us to ponder and think about as we go through is, how do we operationalize this information? Or how do we make this real to the work that we're actually doing? How do we make this real for the people that either come in and visit use our services? How do we make this real for the people in our lives that we encounter, right, outside of the work that we do? And so I hope to help answer some questions like, are we providing culturally competent services to individuals in this community? And are we ourselves culturally competent? And then how can we get some of that? Okay. So I like to start by positioning myself in the space. Okay. So I identify as a Black woman. I am able-bodied. I have what I consider a mid socioeconomic status, and that includes my education level. That includes being a mid-career professional. I am a Christian. I have lived in DeKalb County for almost 9 years now. I'm a community servant through work that I do with my sorority and other organizations. And then I also served as a board member for DeKalb Youth Services Bureau. So I like to position myself in the space, right? Because I recognize that there are some points here where I am a privileged individual. And there are some points where I do not hold privilege, okay? And so I like to say, these are the ways that I choose to position myself. And I like to also, a little bit later on, I'm going to ask you to position yourself, but I do want to start with a story, okay? So this is a personal story, and I don't have a problem sharing it. Like, this is my life, and people pretty much, you know me. But I am a person who I went to college right out of high school, did my my undergraduate education, went to graduate school, got a job right out of grad school, and then I was in a situation where one of my parents, my mother was sick at the time, and through just some happenstance, I was raising my niece. And at the time when I got her, she was 2. And I had never really raised a kid before. I was like, okay, she's 2. And so the first thing I realized as a working parent, now raising a 2 or 3-year-old, is that she got to go somewhere while I go to work, right? So, because she can't come to work with me. Even though at the time I was a director of a school food service district. a school district food service program, I had to pay for childcare. Okay, childcare was an expensive thing for me. Okay, so but we did it, right? Because it's me, it's her. I was living in central Illinois, which it was a little bit less costly to live. So I was able to, and so I then I got transferred up to the Chicago area and moved closer to that area. Hecka expensive. And I ended up leaving my job, right? I wanted to really pursue this idea of purpose. And that point is when I had to go and seek services because I could no longer afford childcare. There were things that I couldn't afford. And I remember this feeling, right, as a person. Now, remind you, I'm educated. I did the things that people say to do. And when I go to seek services, childcare, temporary aid for needy families, these benefits, community benefits, um, temporary assistance, I encounter people who are very harsh. Like they don't see educate, they don't see anything. All they see is this person in front of them. And I remember feeling um just like very like, how do people do this? Like, how do you go to agencies and seek services if people are going to treat you as it was just a very degrading and demeaning experience. And I remembered that experience. And then I went on to work in the nonprofit area, worked for Girl Scouts. I volunteered for Girl Scouts, and then I worked for Girl Scouts. I volunteered with the Urban League, and began to see some of the disparities and just how people were treated. And it actually shifted my purpose and my trajectory of the career path that I was going in. But I do remember during that time thinking, how is it that we're saying that these are social services to help people in a time of need, and the way that the actual people look at you was so far off from that, right? And I remember, I don't want anybody to walk away feeling this kind of way. And I believe it was Maya Angelou who was quoted as saying, people will not remember the words that you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that is a truly important statement, especially as a person coming from hospitality, where customer service, at the very least, is the thing. So I wanted to situate myself in that, right? Because people look at me now and they're like, oh, you're the director of a Center for Black Studies. Oh, but pause, right? So the reason why I can do some of the things and I can see the people on the other side of that table who are talking to me or who I may be teaching is because in some ways I've had these very negative, and then I had some very positive experiences where there was a dance school that gave my niece a scholarship so that she would be able to go to dance school because I couldn't afford it, right? It was just like all these different pieces that did come together. So I've had some negative experiences, but I've had some positive experiences as well. And so I would like to give you an opportunity to also situate and position yourself in your space. So this may be the space that you are working in. This may be the space that you are serving in the capacity. This may be in your own house. So you don't have to say it out loud, but I want you to think about it. If you want to drop it in the chat, you want to talk. Here are some of the ways that we can situate ourselves by our age, our ability status, our race, ethnicity, which are two different things, gender, and that is either in the form of gender identity or gender expression, our sex, our sexual orientation, our socioeconomic status, or religion. So does anybody feel okay, would like to? You can definitely put it in the chat, or feel free to talk. I'll hold tight for like 30 seconds so that if you want to say it, you can. And if you want to type it, you can. Anybody?
I can go ahead and share.
Go ahead, Sheridan.
So I am a 29-year-old able-bodied uh, black female. Um,
And you don't have to do them all. So let me just say
okay,
that. You can do
okay,
as many or as
or
least
just-
little as you want.
okay, and I'm a Christian, so
Okay.
I'll leave mine at that.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. I won't say your name if you don't want me to. But I can say your name. Okay, Jana. Jana is a 24-year-old, and get the words, come on, let it come out. Cisgender, bisexual, white woman. I have multiple disabilities and I come from a middle class background. Okay. Okay. The next thing I'm going to ask you to do is, in this same vein, think about the people that you serve and the work that you do, right? Who are those people and how would you position them in some of these things that you may know? So I could use the Center for Black Studies as kind of an example. So primarily we service college students, and at NIU that can be non-traditional, right? So the age range can be anywhere from 18 to 30s, 40s, depending on the student. Okay. A variety of ability statuses. The center, while we seek to educate everybody, we know that a primary user of our services are Black students, Black faculty, Black staff. Okay. We seek to support people that identify with all genders, all sex, and all sexual orientations, all socioeconomic statuses, and all religions. Now, that's a large group of people. But when you work on the college campus, it's pretty much, and you do the work that I do, I'm positioning, these are the type of people that I primarily work with. Now, when I was on the board of DeKalb YSB, that was probably a different population, right? Because it was certainly youth at a certain age, certainly at a certain, maybe in a certain situation, a piece in their lives, certainly certain parents, certainly certain things. When I worked for Girl Scouts, that was what age 5 to 18, you know, and some of these other things were a variety. So I want you to kind of situate the people that you work with in your own mind. Okay. All right. So let's define a few terms that I use, because I feel like we use these terms a lot and we don't really know what they are and what they mean and where we're going with them. So a conduit. A conduit is defined as a channel or a means of conveying something. Okay. And I'm going to give some examples of this in the next slide. Assistance. The assistance is the action of helping someone with a task. Okay, so it's providing. It is a verb. Okay, if the conduit is a means, then the assistance is the verb, it's the actual helping. And then the stopgap is a temporary way of dealing with a problem or solving a need. So a conduit is very different from a system. Okay, because systems are going to do systemic things, right? They're going to possibly treat people in a very formulaic way, a system. Okay. And in doing that, that system could provide some exclusions for different people in different ways. But a conduit sees itself as a channel, meaning whoever comes down this channel needing this specific assistance, this is how we're going to get them there. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you just every once in a while, if you just give me a thumbs up, give me something, so just so I know, like, okay, yes, okay, I get it. Okay, good. Okay, so let's take a closer look, and I can use the Center for Black Studies as the example. Okay, so centering and remembering the mission, vision, and goals of the Center for Black Studies and the people that we are serving, I believe that this is how we act as a conduit for access and a stopgap in the DeKalb community. So that's how I'm framing this. So in my eyes, in my example, our conduits are our staff, right? Because people see our staff and all of us, we are all these different resources that are helping to fuel and push out things, right? And that happens through our programming. So most recently, we brought hateful things to the DeKalb community, to the NIU community, and wider DeKalb and wider Northern Illinois community. And that is the conduit for people to learn and understand and have these conversations. That's a conduit, right? Because part of being that conduit is how are we, what is the channel? And so our channels are lecturing, we do lectures, we sponsor student retention programming to help students. Any way we can sneak attack, we offer a Black Studies minor and a Black Studies certificate. And then there are courses. Students can take courses at the center. These are our conduits. This is how we do, and this is how we channel that. Okay. And then some examples of providing assistance. Okay. So I listed something that was outside of the center, but a resource that we would connect. We often have young parents who come to college or who are in college, and one of our staff members is that person that will provide that resource to say, here's where you go for the child to get child care assistance. Because you have to go to class, you need this, right? And so that's one of the pieces of assistance that we definitely provide. And then an example of a stopgap. So during the time of COVID, and really in thanks to the generous partners that donated to the Center for Black Studies, we were able to, alongside what the university was doing, provide emergency assistance for some very, very, very in need Black students on campus who are also navigating, and not even on campus, but who attend NIU, right? So that's an example, because that one just met a temporary need, right? And sometimes that goal of meeting that stopgap is to bring it back and get them into the conduit, right? We want to provide you the assistance. We want to give you the stopgap, but we want to get you really into that channel so that we can really live out our mission and our vision. Okay. And remembering that, I want to read the statement that I made at the beginning. Remembering the mission and vision and goals of your organization and the people that you are serving, how I believe that this is how we act as a conduit for access and a stopgap in the DeKalb community. So I would ask you to drop it in the chat. What are examples of conduits, assistance, and stopgaps within your agency? Right? Just think about that. Does anybody want to chime in a little bit and give? And if there's anything on Facebook, go ahead. Tia, I see you. Tia.
I was trying to get to my unmute button. I think for us, and I'm gonna use the bank as an example, the conduits, I'm gonna go with the staff, with the team here. Assistance is we do offer a lot of budgetary or financial classes or credit to help people rebuild their credit or to learn how to budget. And we offer those free. And stopgaps, perfect example would be PPP loans right now for small businesses during the pandemic. So those are off the top of my head for my.
No, that's great. That is great. Thank you, Tia. Absolutely.
There's nothing on Facebook right now, but I was thinking for the United Way, for conduit staff, we're small staff, but we are still staff. And then I was also thinking our partner agencies, since we're not a direct service agency, we partner with, RAMP is actually one of our partner agencies. We partner with different agencies in the work that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I put that as a conduit for us. For the assistance, I put 211, which is the resource and referral line that we run in the county. In the stopgap, I had a hard time coming up with one, but we also did provide some COVID relief grants to our partner agencies
Mhm.
um, during COVID. So I don't know if
But
that would be
I think what the pepperoni pizza has taught us is this, right? That even the stopgap is the emergency loan, right? It is how do we assist in those really challenging times, right? And so, in order for those agencies to keep going, they needed probably some of those funds to make it happen.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So if anybody else would love to drop it in the chat, feel free to do that. So Katie says that the conduit at Ramp is definitely the staff. Definitely the staff. They serve individuals with disabilities, and more than half of our staff are individuals with disabilities themselves. Right? Great examples. Great ways. Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask you to check yourself, right? And we're going to come back to these questions, so you don't have to feel free to answer them right now, but we're going to come back to them. How do you define cultural competency? Are you yourself as an individual a culturally competent person? And how do you know that? Like, how did you determine that? And are you or your agency culturally competent? Right? So you as an individual, and then you or your agency as an entity culturally competent. And some of that plays into the system, making sure that your that it's not systemic as much as it's being a conduit. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So how do we define cultural competency? So because I know that there are a lot of socially derived agencies, a lot of agencies that really work with the public, I wanted to find more of the social working definition of cultural competency. And this is what I found. Cultural competency is the process by which individuals and systems respond respectfully and effectively to people of all cultures, languages, classes, races, ethnic backgrounds, religion, and other diversity factors, gender, sex, sexual orientation, all of that, ability status, in a manner that recognizes, affirms, and values the worth of individuals, families, and communities, and protects and preserves the dignity of each. Now, I pulled this from a really good article, and I'm going to make sure that Sheridan has it so she can forward the citation. But what things come to mind when you think of cultural competency?
Um, I don't know if this is a good answer, but being open minded
Being open-minded, okay.
and being courteous
Courteous,
um, and pleasant to deal with.
pleasant, okay. Tia, I see you.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of piggyback off of Sheridan and also use, respectful
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
that,
try
this
and understanding, I suppose.
definitely understanding. I want to throw in a word that is not in this definition, but I definitely feel like is a couple words. One is compassionate, right? I believe that cultural competency requires us to be compassionate.
Agreed.
And I think in being compassionate, it also helps us to understand that we are all still learning, that I too, I am learning different things, right? Because some things are changing, right? But I think being open to learn, you know, open open to other people that may not be like us, right? And we think about some of these what was named and some of the things that I infuse, but I like to just put to the table that even knowing between being understanding adults with children and children with adults.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have a that age thing is something that we leave out a lot of times, right? But we can learn a lot from kids. Okay? They
Yes.
have a lot to teach us. Okay? If we are open to learning, if we are compassionate in our ways and what we do, I think it's a huge thing if we respect and we show compassion. Okay. And I like the part of this definition that says in a manner that recognizes, affirms, and values. Did anything in here say agree? There was no words that said agree with. There was no words that said that you had to not just be in agreement, but like you had to understand. It didn't say any of that. It said that you recognize, that you affirm, and that you value. If we could just do this in just regular real life, I feel like we would be a lot farther in cultural competency, right? Okay. And recognizing that systems cannot do this for us, because a system is operated by people. So the system itself is operated by the people who run that system, which means that it takes people to show compassion, to recognize, to affirm, and to value. So I'll leave it at that. Okay. Now I'm gonna ask you to check yourself again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you define cultural competency? Are you a culturally competent person? How do you know that? And are you or your agency culturally competent? In my story that I shared earlier, I believe that the system itself was not culturally competent. And in a lot of ways, we know that there are some broken systems in our nation that are not culturally competent, right? There are people who legit are not looking at people and valuing them for being a person. They're not compassionate, right? And then it's also up to the system or the agency. System is one thing, but an agency to make sure that the people who are serving other people, and even the agency down to its mission, vision, and goals, is culturally competent. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I really enjoy that you added that last part about not necessarily agreeing or understanding everything. I think a lot of times we get so caught up on that, like, well, I don't really agree with that, and I don't really understand it fully. It's like we don't have to do that in order to achieve this.
Absolutely.
I really like that part that you added.
And a real transparent moment, I had to learn that. As an adult, right? Because some of this comes from our own personal upbringing, how we were raised, our communities of practice, right? And I come from a community where children don't have a voice, right? Your voice, you don't really have that voice, right? And that, I had to learn how to find my voice, but I also had to learn how to respect the fact that I respect my elders. I had a grandmother. She was alive till she was 101. Definitely showed her the utmost respect all the time. I didn't agree with everything that came out of her mouth. Okay. I did not. Okay. But I loved her and I respected her. And even in that, right, even within our familial communities, we have to practice cultural competency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I ask that you check yourself, check your agency one more time, right? Because living in the DeKalb community, we are a diverse community and we are becoming more diverse, okay? By the minute, second, right? As we are adding, as new businesses are coming, new people are coming, just, students add a huge amount of diversity to this area. They bring some flavor that we can definitely learn from, right? And so having cultural competency is critical when working with people that are coming from various backgrounds, situations, and circumstances. You don't, and it's okay to not know what those are. It's not okay to remain ignorant as a practice. Can I say that? Because we have the tools. Okay. I'll brag on NIU for just 1 minute. We have 4 cultural diversity resource centers on our campus that provide, and then we have we all fall under the umbrella of academic diversity, equity, inclusion. We're providing workshops. There's all kinds of opportunities to learn. Take advantage of those. Okay, I'll get off of that. So culturally competent, this is a little activity. I want you, I have some words in here, I have some systems in here, and I am interested if you can identify, or if you see anything here that you would say, or you can give an example of being culturally competent, a culturally competent conduit, or no, not quite. And also I like colors. So I just want to say that I love colors and I love Wordles. So you're going to get a Wordle. Hopefully. Anybody can identify a system? And maybe I'll start with one, because some of these topics I actually pull from the Equity Challenge website. I want to talk about mental health. Mental health is one that does require some culturally competent individuals in that, especially here, right? Especially where we live in our community. I know that oftentimes people want to see counselors that look like them. People want to, or that share similar identities as them. And so having access to culturally competent mental health care is critical. It's very, very critical. Anyone else want to share?
I would say one. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to ask for clarification.
Yeah, one for access. Working in a disability organization, a lot of times it's very common to recognize barriers of people with physical disabilities, whereas when you have mental, intellectual disabilities, maybe aren't seen as valid, or you can't see the barriers as much. So it's important to recognize that disability is a whole range of things, and sometimes there are things that you can't see.
That's a good one. And I know sometimes it's called invisible disability, but they're not really invisible to the person experiencing them. You know, they're very visible, they're very real, right? So yeah, access, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else want to give one?
I'll say juvenile, working with FSA as a youth mentor, formerly Big Brother, Big Sister, working with individuals that, could be potentially extremely different, and how to learn from one another and grow with one another and help mentor the kids. Yeah,
Absolutely. I'll go education. This is my field, right? So education especially is going through this process of reckoning, I like to say, and becoming more culturally competent, right? And how that looks is teaching students about themselves in a very authentic and real way, right? I think I'll put it to you in these terms. Growing up, I had teachers that looked like me in the classroom, right? And that was a very different experience from when I had teachers that did not look like me. Still gave me a great learning experience, learn what I needed to learn. But when I start to see people in the classroom that look like me, it made something else possible for me and real. And some of the information that they presented, I had never heard before. Right? I was learning about self, which is something that we run into a lot at the Center for Black Studies. When students take our classes, they're like, I've never learned this. Like, I never read this book or this text. I've never seen this movie or this resource, right? We try to be a culturally competent conduit in that way. I think where we could use some work just in our society is when we look at things like childcare inequity, right? People cannot afford to go to work a lot of times because of the cost of childcare. Okay, but you need to go to work to afford the childcare. You see how that can be, like, that's not culturally, and we know that when we're looking at who is in the labor pool and who is doing the, like, who does this affect, it's disproportionately affecting black and brown communities. I had a stat that I got from the Illinois Challenge, and I was like, it was very interesting to me in terms of childcare. So high quality childcare is what it talked about. And it was $13,762 for an infant, which was similar to the average annual tuition for a 4-year university in Illinois. Okay. And it said that 58% of Illinois residents, the 12th highest in the nation, live in a childcare desert with a dearth of available childcare providers. Imagine needing to work and you have nobody to watch your kids. Now you can't work. Now you're going to go and you're going to seek services. Who are you going to meet when you go and seek those services? Is that person going to be culturally competent, or is that person going to look down or through or around you and not think about who you are, the person in front of them, and acting in a compassionate way to get to this cultural competency? Okay. Now, how can you work toward a more cultural competency, a better cultural, stronger cultural competency? Do your own work and that includes as an agency. If I can't tell you, I have seen listservs with Google Drives and Google Docs of information and resources. There's a lot to read. There are a lot of videos. Have courageous conversations with the caveat that they don't cause harm to the individual to which you need to have that conversation. So I guess I'm still not the expert. I am not your expert on all things Black. That, like, and let's just say you encounter a person that is Black in, a community of some sort, school, whatever that case may be. That's not it. Don't, right? There's a way to develop cultural competency, and absolutely there are situations and circumstances where you can ask questions. There are spaces where you can learn. I had a few books that I wanted to kind of show that I read. Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall, a really good book. It really talks about access in marginalized communities for Black women. A couple books that I literally lead with in my classes: The Miseducation of the Negro and W.E.B. Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folks. I believe I saw this book referenced in one of the United Way challenges, but it's White Fragility. This is by Robin DiAngelo. There is white kids growing up with privilege in a racially divided America. This is a good one. Despite the Best Intentions, which this book I believe was loosely based on Northwestern. Where's Northwestern? What community? Evanston, the Evanston community. So there are so many resources out here today that and if it's not a book, there are videos. There's just plenty of ways to be able to learn. I also challenge you to revisit the mission and vision of your agency or your organization. Does it lend to the work being done in a culturally competent manner? And I believe we start this conversation with me giving you a story about me seeking services. Here's the issue with that. The way that that system works is that you have to get a lot of information. And if that information is not given in a certain way, then that system is saying that that person should not have access to that. Now that's not culturally competent at all, right? Because it's not say, what if you're a person, I always say, like, what if you're a person that doesn't have access to certain things? We assume that people have access, but some people they don't. Some people don't have access to certain things, right? But that then means that they are being left out of some very critical resources that they may actually need. So, does your organization lend to being the work being done in a culturally competent manner? Because if it doesn't, then you have to start there. You've got to start there and build up. Perhaps assess those who use your agency or even or your staff. Because let me tell you something. If you want to know what an organization is doing, ask the people that work there on the front line. Ask them. And then ask the people who use that service. They will certainly tell you what's going on in that room or in that interaction, right? And that's how you begin to build it out. You have to know. You have to know what's happening so that you can build that out in your agency. And also, you have access to this to university. Like, this is unique. You are in the backyard of NIU, right? And I can speak definitely for the Center for Black Studies. Most of our lectures, our events are open to the public. Okay. There are, I've already said there's reading lists and things like that. You know, and all of this leads me to what I like to tell people is the go back to the story time. You never know who the person that you are entertaining and providing those services. I'm sure that none of the people who I had to get services from coming through the times at my most vulnerable time, they did not know that they were nurturing somebody that was the bomb, okay? And was going to go on to do really amazing things. But the danger of not being culturally competent is what happens to the people that we serve that don't get that, or who internalize it differently than I internalize it. What happens to them? Do they contribute to society in a positive manner? Are they able to get on their feet and really, and this is why I really came back to higher education to work in the career development space. Are they going to be able to operate in their purpose? Because that service that you provide, that bank account that you open, that loan that you're able to give to a business, a small business in our community that otherwise may not be able to open, like, legit, that can change the trajectory of purpose. And that is what cultural competency. It is recognizing that purpose exists in everyone. And the work that we do helps to facilitate that person pushing further toward their purpose. Okay. So it's a few things that I want to like kind of some takeaways. So first is that definition of cultural competency. I really like that definition. I think that we must work hard to understand our own personal identities, because that's what we bring into the space. That can be our pushers and our pullers, right? So they can push us toward helping even more deeply and caring and being more compassionate, or it can pull us in a whole different direction. Okay. I believe we need to understand how systems can serve as culturally competent conduits and how that's important in our own community. And I just want to remind, let's be careful how an agency, an organization, or a person, how we treat each other. right? How it matters. It really, really does matter. I like to say I live in a community, and the community that I live in, listen, nothing's happening in this community. Somebody's going to tell you something, okay, that's going on, and they're going to make sure, we're going to make sure that everybody is okay here. And I really enjoy that, because I know that if my dog get loose, everybody in the neighborhood knows who she is. They're going to bring her right back to this house. You know what I mean? Or that if we have somebody in our community that we know is in need, that I can say, okay, I'm growing kale. What do you have? What do you have? Right? So that we can build it up and help to, regardless of the situation, that doesn't even matter. Okay. And then invest in your organization and the people you employ so that they feel supported in becoming culturally competent. Because I can't stress enough how much, when we talk about how strapped we are, right, for cash and for resources, really, to run the organization itself, we have to be careful that we are making sure that the people that are helping the people are themselves culturally competent. And that may take a reimagining of how we purpose our resources. And, Sheridan, you can always tell me when it's time. I'm almost done. So,
Okay, you're good. Go ahead.
but I think that investment piece is critical, because it's not always money. Sometimes it's saying, you know what? I know you want to go to this lecture on Tuesday night. Instead, why don't you go to that, and I want to pay you for that 2 hours. I want to pour that back into you, because I know that in order to have a cult, if as an organization we have culturally competent individuals, and our agency and our organization is culturally competent, then the people that we serve will feel that, and they will be empowered through that. Okay. So understanding the privileges that we hold when working with vulnerable populations is very important. Okay, we can't assume, because I can't assume, because I come home and I have a house. I'm able, with a garage, right? That I'm able to feed myself, that I'm able to purchase the clothes and the makeup, and oh, so much makeup. That's another story for another day. That I'm able to do these things, and I can't be too haughty in my own self to believe that the people that I serve and work with have that same thing. Okay. So I want to thank you for your time and participation. I want to leave you with this quote by John A. Powell, who came virtually in the pandemic and gave us a great conversation about belonging. He says, the circle of human concern should include everyone, including those with whom we disagree. We are all part of each other. We don't like it, but we're connected. So, like it or lump it, as humans, we are family, period. And how we treat each other, how we learn about each other, and how we take what we know about each other and have fruitful conversations and provide fruitful services. That's how we're all connected in this. So thank you to the Illinois United Way Equity Challenge, to the Kishwaukee United Way. This was a great conversation. I don't want this conversation to stop. I definitely would, if you have questions or conversation pieces, I'm definitely here to continue that. But I like to always end with take care of yourself and each other. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne. That was great. I truly enjoyed it, and I, like you, don't want this conversation to end. I hope that everyone that participated enjoyed themselves and definitely learned something to take back to their organization. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share or any questions as we end?
I will say that Tabara Boston, hi Tamara. She drops in the chat the belonging video for those who didn't get an opportunity. I think that's the belonging video for those who didn't get an opportunity to watch it.
Oh, from Dr. Powell?
From Dr. Powell.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely want to check that
I want
out.
to grab it and drop it in the Facebook.
Oh, yeah. I can do that.
And if you don't want to ask questions, I will encourage you can reach out to me. I work here. And so feel free to reach out and I'm generally open for a conversation. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to ask one, I guess, ending question is, I know everyone in here is not, well, I'm not sure, actually, I shouldn't say that. But if we're not in a position, like a decision making, I guess, position, how can we help our employers and our board members and even other staff see the value in being culturally competent?
You know, I think that is the want to say tricky part about being culturally competent and trying to develop that cultural competence is that this is your job, but you need this. And here's the thing: the rub is that you need to be able to eat and take care of your family, right? And so I think that it is absolutely acceptable to bring I am a habitual line stepper in that way, and I believe that was Bernie Mac that said I'm definitely that person, okay, who I would often bring those things up because I felt like they needed to be known, they needed to be talked about. So I think especially I call it impact, influence without authority in a lot of ways. And some of those ways can come through the people that you serve and them sharing their experiences and the rationale for why we should. Sometimes it comes down to money and saying, if we don't do this, if we don't start behaving in this way, and here's why, here's the impact, right? And I think as the individual, I would still take it upon myself to become culturally competent and not wait on your employer, right? Because either they're going to catch up or they're going to lose you to another space that is going to value that in you. Katie, hopefully to answer your question, Sheridan.
It definitely does.
So what Sheridan asked got me thinking, and since Jana isn't going to brag about herself, I will. So a while back, RAMP realized like we focus so much on people with disabilities, and that's just one aspect, right, of who someone is. So we've made it a big priority to become more culturally competent. And Jana this month, as we know is Pride Month, has done an amazing job every week crafting these emails that just are teaching us more about LGBTQ culture and competency and sending them out to all staff. And, you know, she's one of our direct services staff, but she's taken the lead on that, and doing that has really like helped all of us just be better allies, be better at our jobs and serving our consumers. So that's another good example, I think, of a way that anyone at an organization can educate their coworkers and spread the word.
I agree. And also I heard and what you said, Katie, was take initiative, that Janet took initiative and then did, you know what I mean? Again, habitual line stepper. And it's a good thing, right? Because nobody has to ask you to do it. Some things it's like, you know what? I know I hold a certain, like when Jana told us her different identities. When Jana walks in the room, she's walking in the room with the lenses of her identities. When Ann walks in the room, she's walking in with the lenses of my identities. And there's nothing that will help you to jump into action than to not see your identities represented in that room and in that conversation that is happening in the room.
You know, I want to add to that too, because Anne, you said earlier, do the work. Sheridan, you were asking how to get others to actually do the work. And Katie, you used a great example on how Jana then says, you know what, I'm not going to wait for you to come to me. I'm going to give it to you. So I really like the idea of, you may not be able to lead the horse to water, but I can bring the water to you, and it's up to you if you're going to drink it. I don't know how easier it can be if I can't provide it to you by in the form of educational emails or however you want to do that. I think that's a great idea, and I loved how that just came full circle with everybody on this Zoom.
I like that too. And I like this. And so something that you said, Tia, was phenomenal. Like it came full circle. And I just like to throw this in. When you said you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make them drink, but you can bring the water to them. An employee, hear me clearly, agencies, an employee is only going to bring water to you so much. When you continually are showing them that you are not culturally competent, or you and something that you don't care, or that you don't feel like that's your shtick, they will leave. And there is nothing worse than losing a good staff member, a good culturally competent person, because of that organization's lack of cultural competence. And so there's a huge push for that, to say to what we call manage up. You know, what cultural competency in a lot of ways is forcing organizations to look at how the organizations are developed. This is an organizational development conversation if I've ever heard one, right? And it's just people literally helping to manage that process up as well.
That was awesome. I will say too, it truly makes a difference coming from some a prior organization that wasn't culturally competent and didn't have these conversations and wasn't open to doing that, and then coming to the United Way has truly made a difference, I think, for me personally and professionally. So I'm thankful for that. Just seeing the difference for myself personally in the organizations, it definitely makes a difference. So this was great. Does anybody else have any closing comments or thoughts? I'm so glad that you guys were able to jump on and participate. If there is nothing else, I will share some additional emails. I'll send a follow-up email to those who weren't able to participate as well. But I was just reading chat. I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate you doing this. It was great.
Thank you, Sheridan. Sheridan didn't even know what I was going to talk about today, but Sheridan's like, I trust you. I know.
I did. Absolutely. I absolutely did. So this was great. I hope you all benefited from it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne. And it was great seeing you today.
Great seeing you again. Me and Tia used to exercise together. I miss that. I miss those times. Yeah, I do. I definitely do. But thank you so much. And if us or the Center for Black Studies can be of assistance, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.
Everyone. Oh, we should probably tell them there is a Juneteenth celebration on Saturday for those who want to attend. And we can get that flyer to you, Sheridan, if you don't already have it.
I do not. Yep, I will send that if you can send it to me, and I'll go ahead and send that in my follow-up email for sure.
Okay. I'll make sure you have it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, you guys have a good rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.